All righty, we're in the final chapter of the final gospel, John chapter 21. This comes on the heels of the purpose statement that John gave us there at the end of chapter 20. Somebody go ahead and read verses 30 and 31 for us once again. Thanks, Chadwick.
20.
Yep.
Nice. Truly, Jesus did many other signs in the presence of that are not written in this book. But these are that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name.
Good. This is where we began at the beginning of our study, that John has been presenting encounters that Jesus had with people from every walk of life, and his purpose in doing so is that you might believe. He wants us to behold and to believe, to see and to know that Jesus is indeed the Son of God, and in believing have life in his name. Not and the idea of eternal life is not just this is something that will begin when you die. But it begins in this life. When you are born again, there is a new life. Even as Mariah prayed a moment ago about God's Spirit among us, he gives new life even now. We begin to walk in that abundant life. There's an already not yet, but and we've seen that with the disciples as they have believed, and then they've had another encounter with Jesus, and they believed, and they heard a teaching, and they believed, and they saw a miracle, and they believed, and then they saw him heal someone, and they believed. And there's been this progression of faith all the way up to the last encounter with Jesus with one of his disciples who was doubting, encounter with the doubter with Thomas. Thomas puts his hand in the side and believes, and now it's your turn that you may believe. Now in chapter 21, after this conclusion, we have a final scene of Jesus with his disciples on the beach. This is going to be now his 7th appearance that we've seen. It's going to be his 3rd appearance to these disciples, I believe, but his 7th to different people so far as we go through. And you'll remember that Jesus he's appearing to indeed testify to the fact that he rose from the dead. He is alive from the dead. We see him eating and talking and ministering to the people. And this is going to be preparation for what is to come afterwards, which we've been studying through in the book of Acts. Chapter 21. The scene is going to be on the Sea of Galilee or Tiberias. It's the same spot, and the disciples are going to be fishing. Somebody pick it up for us. Chapter 21, verses 1 through 3.
After this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. He revealed himself in this way: Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael of Cana, sons of Zebedee, 2 others together. Simon Peter said, "I am rich. We will go with you." They went out into the boat. That night, they caught.
Good. All right. What do you notice? What do you see? Pardon? Okay, a flashback to the beginning of the story. In what sense? Yeah. Back to. Good. Yeah. So we have a scene where the disciples are back to doing what they were doing at the beginning, where they are fishing. Now there's let's come up with why are they fishing? Let's get a couple possible reasons why they're fishing. Okay, so this was part. Yeah. Well, so let's that's the positive spin. Let's start with the negative spin. That's the positive. We'll come back to that. What's the negative spin? Yeah. This is a sign that they are disillusioned with Jesus. They're doubting. They're just like, you know what? We're just going to go back to being fishermen. We're done with this. We're not believing. Rather, we're just going to go back to being fishermen. I would say that would be yeah, that's a possible reading. The other reading, which is more positive, hopeful spin, is they needed to eat. And this is what you do. You know how to fish. Now, there's nothing wrong with a disciple also having a job. Can anybody think of another disciple in the Bible who had a job? Okay, let's just Paul, right? He was a tent maker. So him going to work was not a sign of him not believing. It was, he needed to, especially when he's working in Corinth, he decided to not take money from them because there was so much corruption in that city with traveling philosophers who would come in and get money. He's like, you know what? I'm not taking any offering from the church just to show I'm not here for your money. I'm not like these peddling guys. I'm gonna make tents on the side. I think these guys they need to eat. They need to eat. They need to make a living. So that's my take here. It's the more positive spin. I think they need fish, so they need to make some money. But this is the natural thing for them to do because this is what they know. They go fishing. Anything else stand out to you in those first 4 verses?
Seven of them together.
But yes, you have 7 disciples, and we could read into that as being the perfect number, or it could just be that there were 7 of them in a boat. Either way, we have 7 disciples. So it's a big fishing boat. This way, should see that here. Okay, good. Anything else? Yeah, so Peter again is going to be prominent, and he has been, and he will continue to be a prominent figure. And here he says, "I'm going fishing, guys." They haven't gotten orders yet from Jesus as to what they're to do next. So in the meantime, while they're waiting on further instructions from Jesus, they need to go back to work. And this is what they do. All right, verse 4. Somebody read verse 4 down through 8.
Just as day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, do you have any fish?" They answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved therefore said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea. The other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish. They were not far from the land, but about 100 yards off.
Okay, good. So it's they've been out there all night, and this is a typical time for fishing. You go out in the evening, and the fish are stirred up looking for food, and this is when you would go fishing. Well, they've been out all night, and now it is day is breaking. Right, so it's a new morning. We don't know how long this has been since the resurrection. It's been a few days at least. Week, we're not sure exactly, but it's been a minute, and it's daybreak. They're out on the boat, and it says Jesus stood on the shore. Yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Now, why did the disciples not know it was Jesus? It is early. I don't know if you can. When I was coming in this morning, I saw somebody getting out of their car, and I was like, "Who is that?" I couldn't see. Maybe that's because I'm old and losing my eyesight. I'm not sure. It could also be that it's dark. Okay, that might be part of it. 100 yards, so it's not like right there. So it's a distance. Okay, good. His resurrected body, and there's already been confusion over this is the Lord, right? So we don't again know exactly what the glorified state looked like. I read this with the kids last night, and they always have some kind of interesting insights or questions. One of them asked, so is Jesus more handsome after resurrection? That was like, I don't know, sir. But anyway, so but he wasn't just sitting over there glowing. Okay. So whatever the glorification looks like, it doesn't mean that he's a little like light bulb over there and they're like, oh, who's this? Right. It's 100 yards off and it's dark. And I mean, certainly there's been confusion about the resurrected appearance of Christ. And there's also like, is that guy was dead? It's still a real situation where they're coming to terms with the fact that he really is alive, right? So I don't know that we need to make a huge deal out of it. The reason I do right here and have this question is because when you read through commentators, people just come up with all kinds of stuff, and I just want you to know, I think it's okay to have a plain reading when you're going through and just be like, it's a long way off, it's early morning, we're not sure. So but I think there is something important to notice about their recognizing Jesus. We'll see that in a second. What else do you see here? Yep. So there are other disciples there. Yep. There's 7 of them total. That's right. So Jesus initiates with them. Y'all catch anything? Right? It's a typical thing. Anytime I'm at the beach, I'm always gonna ask somebody, y'all catching anything? He calls them children. Do you have any fish? Oh, they've been out all night long, not caught a thing. No. And then he says what there, Otavio, in verse 6? So we've seen this scene before, as you mentioned. Where have we seen this? Okay. All right. We have an encounter early on where they are they're fishing and they've got nothing, and then the Lord shows up and indeed they catch, right? Okay, good. So they cast the net on the right side of the boat. He says, you will find some. So they cast it, and sure enough, they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of the fish. Now, what do you call this? It's a miracle. Yes, it's called a miracle. You've caught nothing all night, and now you've caught more than you can handle. This is a miracle. Jesus is obviously here, Lord over the fish. He knows where they are. He can tell them what to do. All of a sudden, he just summons them up, and sure enough, here they are. They get caught. So Jesus is providing for his people once again, as he always is. He is providing here exceedingly abundantly, more than they could ask for or imagine. Right. All right. And now what happens in verse 7? Somebody read verse 7 for us again. First part there.
That disciple whom Jesus loved, therefore said to Peter, it is the Lord.
All right, pause. Talk to me. What do you need to notice? What? Yeah. Talk to me. What do you see? Okay. So yeah. So maybe Lauren said that John's making sure Peter knew that he recognized him first, just like he beat him to the tomb first. Maybe John does recognize him first. And how does John know who it is? What's happened? A miracle, yes. Jesus has spoken. As we've seen all the way through here, his sheep hear his voice, and they know that it's him. They didn't recognize him when he was standing there, but when he speaks, then you know who he is. Same thing with Mary. I think he's a gardener. He speaks, Rabboni, right? Like his sheep hear his voice. They know his name. And John knows this is the Lord. He's spoken the miracle. It's him. It's him. Right? So this is, I think we're to see here that yes, the miracle is going to accompany these words of Jesus, and John, whom Jesus loved, recognizes, and he knows him. I always appreciate the way that John describes himself, the disciple whom Jesus loved. You see this all the way through the gospel, right? And when he thinks about the way he's going to describe himself, he's like, I'm the one that Jesus loved. Now, how might even just taking that posture for ourselves as we think about our own walking with Jesus, how might that be helpful for us? Good. There's a constant reminder of what's true. He cares for you, loves you. About that. He doesn't say that, the disciple who penned 5 New Testament books, the disciple who, he doesn't have his his Instagram little, profile is not like his accomplishments or any of that kind of stuff. His identity is completely wrapped up in, I'm the one the Lord loves. He loves me. Do you think this is instructive for us to remember that we are first and foremost, if we are in Christ, loved? Yeah, don't get over that. He loves you. If you're his, he loves you. You are received, delighted in, affirmed, accepted, secured, and he knows the worst about you more than anybody else, right? Even more than ourselves, really. We are known yet loved, not rejected, not forgotten. And for John, that's the primary way he wants to be known. So who are you, John? I'm the disciple who's loved. I'm a loved one. I think oftentimes we think about our love for God, which is an appropriate thing to consider. Do we love the Lord? Are our affections for him? Is our obedience in line with his commandments? Do we love him? It's no small thing, though, to remember that this is who a disciple is. And John, the author here, this is how he presents himself. I'm the disciple whom Jesus loved. Well, when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he does a Peter, right? And what's he do? Yeah, sure, I would have done that, but doesn't make the swimming easier to throw on his outer garment here. So he grabs his flannel, puts it on, dives into the ocean. Where have we seen this before? Yeah. Remember when in that case there was a storm and Jesus came to the disciples, they're all bugging out, as we would be in the middle of a storm in the middle of the sea. And Peter in that instance, he knows it's safer to be with Jesus in the storm, even if that means that you get out of the boat. He wants to be with him. Well, here, again, Peter's heart, I love he's impulsive, which gets him in trouble sometimes. But his impulse is, I want to be near him. And he dives in the water and he swims to shore. The other disciples get stuck with the work. And then Pete that told us to come out here, right? Yep, and Peter, off he goes. Goes Pete swimming again. They lug in all of the fish. They were not far from the land, about 100 yards. Anything else in 4 through 8 that you see? Yep.
Gets to Jesus great to defend his children in verse 5. I was trying to refer to them that way before his resurrection.
It's certainly a term that John uses often. When you read through 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, it's a term that John uses regularly. I'm uncertain. I think it's important for us to remember that we are not children of Jesus, we're children of the Father. So these are it would be like his brothers here. In that sense, he's calling them children. But I think, if anything, I think it would be like you're the children of the Father because of Christ's ministry, which would make him their brothers. But I do think it's significant to notice that John really picks it up in his epistles, and this is where how he refers to the Christians, little children. Good observation. Yep.
Do you see Jesus instructing them to cast that aside and then getting his people review? Is this just a last thing? How do you?
Yeah, I don't think he's mad at him. I don't think this is a rebuke in any way. I think it's a merciful provision. But they have nothing apart from him. And then when he shows up and they obey his word, there is exceedingly abundantly more than they could ask for or imagine. And it's his initiation, it's his instruction, it's his guidance, it's his provision, which I think is going to be a bit of a picture for the days ahead. That the church is going to be built with this same sort of thing. That the Lord is going to come to his people and he's going to tell them where to go. And as they go in obedience, God will bring provision and will care for them in all the ways that they will need, and they will see a great harvest. So I think there's some allusions there, even just with you trust and obey, there's no other way, so I don't see it as a rebuke. Like, I've always told you to throw it on the right side, you losers, you're always throwing on the left. Like, I don't think that's what's happening here. I think it's the Lord just being merciful at the end of a long day. They're tired, they're exhausted, they've given up hope. Now he shows up and supplies.
Garrett, to the broader setting, this is a pretty far distance from where they were previously, right?
So we don't, you mean geographically? Yeah, I mean, it would have been, I forget exactly how far, it depends on where they are on the sea. But I'm not sure, I forget exactly how far it is, but it's been a hike. So it's been a minute. But this would have been this would have been where you go fishing. It's where all the fish are.
Just part of that to how this is their occupation. So spending equipment with work and food. So great. All the same.
Yeah, it's good. It's encouraging. He meets them right where they are and their needs and supplies in abundant measure. It's good. All right, 9 through 14, somebody 9 through 14 for us.
And as soon as they had come to land, saw a fire of coals there, fish laid on it, and bread. Jesus said, bring some of the fish. Simon Peter went up and dragged the net to land, full of large fish, 153. Altogether, there were so many that was not enough. Jesus said, come and eat breakfast. And the disciples there asked him, where are you? Knowing that it was the Lord. Jesus said, he took the bread, gave to them, and likewise the fish. This is now the third time Jesus showed himself beside this congregation.
Good. So let's start off verse 9. What do you notice? Got breakfast for him. Man, I love the Lord. The Lord's got a barbecue going. And notice here, there's another miracle of fish. I mean, it doesn't say anything about Jesus. I mean, I guess he walks, I don't know how he just walks up to the shore. He's like, out jumps some fish. He grabs them. I don't know how that happens. But he's caught some fish there as well. And he's got a little barbecue pit for him. And he's got breakfast prepared. Yep, come and have breakfast, he says. All right, very good. What else? Let's even go one more thing with that. What's happening here? What is he doing? Good. And why is that significant that he's sharing a meal with his disciples?
Bodily resurrection.
Okay, good. So again, ghosts don't eat, seen Ghostbusters, it doesn't fall through them. It doesn't work like that. Okay, they don't eat, but he's a real living human being, right? So he's eating with them. Okay, good.
He's true resurrected Christ.
Yeah, so this is not an imposter. This is really him. Okay, good. Good. What has Jesus said to them a number of times so far? Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. And now here we have another meal. The meal is a symbol of, not just a symbol of, but also facilitates and produces and pictures fellowship. Fellowship, Jesus doesn't have his table be like, okay, this could be the faithful table, and here's the kiddie table over here. For all the people who just, who denied me and who, all that kind of stuff. He doesn't put the disciples over at the kiddie table because they've been bad, and then he sits over here. That's not how he works. He has died for their sin and their shame and their guilt, and he's been raised, and now he has been raised to initiate reconciliation with them. He's come to them. They are the ones who scattered. They left him behind. They all ran away. All of them did. And now he seeks them out again. He comes to them. He provides for them. He says, come and eat. Let's have breakfast together. He initiates that. I'm not sure if you've ever had like a relationship with somebody, a friend that it just something happened, it changed the relationship, and then it can feel awkward, even if you feel like it's supposed to be good, but then you're like, you don't know how to initiate because you're like, I don't know what that looks like. And Jesus just cuts through all of that and he's like, let's see. He wants them to know that they are indeed loved and cared for and affirmed and received. This, by the way, through the Old Testament, the sacrifices, when you see what happens when you bring to the priest the food and you have a burnt offering, some of it is consumed. The priest eats and you eat. So these offerings turn into basically a barbecue where you and the priest eat together as a picture of this sacrifice brings reconciliation and restoration between you and God. This one who represents God you're dining with now is a picture of you and God have fellowship again. It's given. Well, Christ himself here is the sacrifice, and now he is with his disciples initiating a meal. He has come. He's not, as Jimmy said, holding anything against them, but rather they are loved, received, accepted, and invited to draw near. Good. Anything else you notice?
Yeah, it uses the fish that. Just use fish that he provides. What,
He's like, yeah, let's take what you got and let's enjoy it. Right. So yeah, good observation there. So he's gonna throw some more fish on the barbie. And he's going to use some of what they have labored to haul in, which again he has initiated and provided. You'll notice there they in verse 11. Tell me about the fish. Okay, yep. So there's a lot of miracles happening here. This is a lot of fish. How many fish? 153 fish. And they're small fish or big fish? Big fish, right? So this is trophy season, okay? They've got big fish, 153 of them, and somehow the nets didn't tear. These little details here, I think they're all important because if you take 153 and you multiply it by 7, and then you multiply that by 40, you get the year Jesus comes back. That's do that kind of stuff. So no, that's a bad way to read the Bible. Yeah, 153 times the 7 disciples who are there. No, I think John just remembers this. It's in his prayer journal. You know, he jots this one down. There was 153. It's like one of those old pictures where you had that, you know, you got all the fish lined up that everybody caught on the day. They've got 153, and they were not little, and they were big, and the nets didn't tear. He just has provided beyond what they could have imagined, and he protected, he provided, he supplied. Just the whole thing it's a miracle. And it's all for a facilitated fellowship and encouragement and provision. I think, again, all of this is going to foreshadow what it means now to be reconciled to the resurrected Christ, that you are loved, that you are provided for, that you are miraculously sustained, that you are going to have supply beyond measure in ways that really there's no other way to describe what's happening in your life other than Jesus showed up. Like, so these guys all walk into town after this, carrying all the fish. They're like, what happened to you? Where'd y'all go fishing? Right? Like, what? Jesus showed up. He provided in ways that are beyond imagination. So I think the details here are not intended to give some kind of mystical reading that you try to figure out deep spiritual insights. I think the details are there because they remember this encounter. I don't know if you guys do this or not, but I jot down regularly. I'm not a good journaler. I used to journal back in the day before I had children. I don't anymore. But when I do journal, first of all, I appear pretty unstable because it's either really good stuff, and I'm like, Lord, this is the best thing that's ever happened, or it's really bad stuff. I'm like, this is the worst thing. You know, it's just very, very up and down. So, but I am so encouraged to open up old things and to be like, on this date, the Lord answered this prayer. So I do have a little an Evernote app that you can put notes in, and I have something for every year anytime something significant happens, I try to remember, just jot down a couple of notes. And then at the end of the year, Carrie and I will typically go and we'll kind of bring up our highlight reel from the year of things that the Lord did. And it's just an encouragement to remember how God showed up and God provided, right? Like he does that in ways that you're intended to remember. So one example, just even the past couple of years, I thought it was faith building for the elders, and I hope for the church was, remember Bon Air Baptist Church gave our church properties, building 3 houses, which was a big deal because they were closing. They gave us the facilities, and we were trying to figure out how to steward them. Well, there was a church called Portico that needed a place to meet, so we started leasing to them. Well, then Bill Deckert had long wanted to plant a church, and the Lord, put it on his heart. So he and Brophy. Anyway, fast forward, we come to this elders meeting where Bill and Ben are about to present. We know that we have the memo. They're about to present. Hey, we want to do a church plant, and we need money in order to find a place to meet, do the budget, all this kind of stuff. The same night on the elder docket was, what are we going to do with the building from the Bon Air building properties? Because Portico, they need a building and they don't have tons of money. So what are we going to do? So we intentionally put the Bon Air properties before in the agenda. So let's make the decision about this. What does the Lord want us to do before we think about the church plan? And so we talked about it and prayed about it, and the consensus after much discussion was that we think the Lord wants us to give the Bon Air properties, some $8 million worth of property, just give it to Portico, and let the Lord bless them and give it to them. So it was a hesitant vote. So we have guys like, hold on, wait. I know we put this here because we don't want to talk about what we're about to talk about, but we are about to have a request for a bunch of money, and we're just going to give this away. But all the elders just thought, this is what seems right. I think we're supposed to give it to them. So we voted to give the properties to Portico, and then the next up was, okay, now give us a proposal. And the proposal, was we want to plant a church and we need a bunch of money. So then we're like, okay, Lord, now we need you to provide money. And a couple of the brothers raised their hand. Didn't we just have money that we just gave all the money away? And but we prayed, and we just sensed that that's what the Lord wanted us to do. And sure enough, a couple months later, or actually a couple weeks later, Emmanuel Baptist Church, who was a dying church, reached out that there was some people who were looking to do a church plant. And long story short, they ended up giving their building to Bill and Ben, and the Lord just provided. And he always does. And I think for our elders, it was really a faith building, encouraging reminder that you can't outgive God. Like $8 million worth of property is nothing to the Lord. He's like, I got you another place. It's actually more land, and here you go. And regardless of whether the value is the same, that's not the point. The point is God can just give whatever you need. And I think for our elders, it was very encouraging just to see you can't outgive him. I think the same sort of thing happens here. Remember the 153 fish thing? That was amazing. And the nets didn't even tear. So I think they remember the way that God cared for them. And God told Israel. Do you remember what God told Israel to do on their way from Egypt to the promised land? He told them lots of things to do they didn't do, but there was something that they were told to do that they did do, particularly as they went through the Jordan River. Yeah, to pick up stones of remembrance. When God stopped the river, made it go back, just like he did with the Red Sea, and he told them, I want everybody from your tribe to pick up some stones. I want you to carry a stone, and I want Judah to pick up a stone, and I want, Naphtali to pick up a stone, and I want you to lug the stones with you, which is not, it seems like last thing we need to do is carry some rocks around. But do you remember why the Lord told him to do that?
Build a monument.
So build a monument so that what? Yeah. So someday when your kid comes up and you're like, hey dad, what's that pile of rocks out there? You'd be like, let me get Butch. And then Butch comes over and he's like, let me tell you about them rocks. I remember but you testify about what the Lord has done, right? I mean, you say those stones were in the bottom of a river and we had no way to get across, but the Lord made the river stop and made the waters roll back to Adam. And we came through just like he promised. I say all this to say, remember what God's done in your life. Don't just shrug it off. Don't ignore it. Remember it, jot it down. Be like, you remember when the Lord brought us through that surgery and we were walking already? Like, the Lord did that. He really cared for us. Remember that time when we were broke as a joke and I had no way to get, and then the Lord gave a job. Remember that time? And you just jot them down and look back and remember he's been faithful. He doesn't always give you what you want when you want it. They would have liked to have had the fish a long time before this. I mean, they'd fished the entire night. There was a whole lot of empty netting. But then he did provide, and it was more than they could imagine. So all that to say, remember what the Lord has done. None of them asked, who are you? They knew that it was the Lord. He took bread, gave it to them. They ate. This is the third time Jesus revealed to the disciples who he was after he was raised. So this is his seventh appearance total, his third to these disciples. Anything else on 1 through 14? Yep. Yeah, we don't. We're not sure. We know it's less than 40 days because 40 days is when he ascends. We're not sure exactly how long. If I'm guessing, I'm saying it's probably in the first 20 days, but that's just a guess. So we're not sure exactly. Great question. Yeah, I think John is highlighting the fact that there's still bewilderment and right. I mean, like, I think that's still in the air. But they know it's him. I mean, again, there is some sort of uniqueness to his appearance that's somewhat different. We don't know what that means. But they know that it's him. And I think John's simply highlighting, they're not like, now who are you? Like, they all know it's the Lord. He says the things that the Lord says. He does the things that the Lord does. He's really alive from the dead. I think it's just, I keep thinking it must just be that, like, we just saw him tortured to death and he was dead. And this is really him. Wow. It really happened. I think it's that. Very good.
I was thinking too, I wondered if that also marks a change in Thomas. Yeah, Thomas was there, and before when they saw Jesus.
Yeah.
And they saw him like that.
Good. That's a good observation. So Lauren mentioned that before Thomas had to ask. I'm not going to believe until I touch him, until I see him. Here, Thomas doesn't need to ask. It's settled for him. It's good, man.
I also think that it indicates again, it's like years change, correct? It look exactly the same, but there's a question not. I think could otherwise be.
Yep. And by his words and his works, it's affirmed.
It's clear.
All right, now 15 through 19, probably maybe my favorite part of the whole. Somebody for us, 15 through 19.
Now.
Good. So now we have this final encounter between Jesus and Peter. So they've done their dining. They finished breakfast, and Jesus initiates with Peter. And what does he ask? Do you love me? Yeah. Very good. So 3 times he asks him, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? It was sweet last night when I was going over this with the kids. One of the younger ones said, when we read that and noticed that he asked it 3 times, they said, hold on, wait. He said, was this the guy with the rooster thing? This was the guy with the rooster thing. Yeah. Yep, this was the one. Yeah, 3 times Peter had denied the Lord. And so talk to me about what Jesus is doing here with Peter. Yeah. He is restoring him. He's already symbolized this with coming to him, with the fellowship meal. But now he's restoring him. And how does it happen? What's he do? He definitely puts him on the spot. Jesus has no problem putting anybody on the spot. Yes, he does put him on the spot. Good. Are you sure you are? Are you sure? Yeah, I think he's publicly giving Peter opportunity to affirm what he denied before. Each time, Peter had, I do not know him, I don't know him, I don't know him. Are you sure you don't know him? I'm sure I don't know him, right? Now he's giving him opportunity to publicly say, I love you. Yes, you know that I love you, right? Yeah, I think he's giving you an opportunity to publicly confess and repent, and to reaffirm what was previously in question. And I think Jesus does this. Why did he not just do it once? He could have just said, do you love me? All right, good. We're forgiven. That would have worked. It's fine. Sufficient. He is given a charge. Yep. See that in a second. Yep. Yes. Yeah, he's denied him 3 times. I just think he wants this to be, he's just driving it home for Peter. You are forgiven. forgiven. You're forgiven. You're forgiven. Do you love me? Yes. Then I want you to go feed the lambs. Do you love me? Go tend the sheep. Go take care of the flock. He's restoring him. He's forgiven him. Fellowship is restored. And now he's employing him. Go take care of the sheep. Peter's screw up did not end his life. Like it was a bad one. I mean, he bad messed up. But the Lord was not done with him. I think it's a very important thing for you to know in your walk with the Lord, that you will mess up. You will bad mess up. You will sin against the Lord in ways that you will look back with great shame, great regret, great grief. I didn't do that. And the Lord initiates with his people. And he says, do you love me? I do. Then let's go. Then let's go. Then let's go. Notice here, he doesn't say, do you love me? Yeah. All right. 50 burpees. Like that's not what he does. He didn't make him pay back anything. He wants Peter to know he's restored. And as deep as the wound went, so deep goes the grace. Fully covered 3 times. It's done, Peter. So Jesus here, the shepherd, comes to the lost sheep who he wants to turn into a shepherd. He's restoring him. This the same language, by the way, sticks with Peter. When we come to First Peter chapter 5, he speaks about fellow shepherds and Jesus as chief shepherd, and this idea really sticks with him. Like he's called to care for the sheep, tend to the lambs, and I want us to remember that no matter how far your sin has gone, that you flee to Christ, there's mercy there. And as deep as the sin goes, so deep goes his forgiveness and his mercy. Then he tells him to follow me. At the same time, in verses 18 through 19, he foretells of his death. He says, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you're old, you will stretch out your hands and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. And then John says he was telling Peter how he was going to die. Peter's death is not recorded in the scriptures. Church tradition says that he was crucified. Tradition says upside down next to his wife. He requested, again, tradition says, to be crucified upside down because he was not worthy to die the death of his Lord. Unsure about all those details, but Jesus foretold the fact that he would be put to death, and particularly, you will stretch out your hands and another will dress you and carry you where you don't want to go. Peter's going to have the kind of death that he likely would have had he not denied Jesus. If he had not denied Jesus, he would have likely been put with Jesus. And here Peter, though, will later on not escape death, and he will willingly endure it this time. And it's rooted in, I love him, I love him, I love him. And he is, because of his love, now willing to follow Jesus no matter what the cost. And it will cost him his life. Now, when he hears that, something doesn't sit well with him. Verse 20, Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them, the one who also leaned back against him during the supper and said, Lord, who is it that's going to betray you? And when Peter saw him and said to Jesus, Lord, what about this man? So, well, what about your favorite? Right? What about John? I know what you just said is going to happen to me. I'm going to get stretched out and put to death. What about this guy? And what's Jesus say to him? Verse 21. 2.
Follow that deteriorate to what? What is that to be? Follow down.
Yep. Yep. If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? You follow me. They give me a Living Bible translation. I have to actually look up the Living Bible. Translate that for me. What's he saying to it? Mind your own business. Doesn't matter what I'm doing in somebody else's life. You follow me. Doesn't matter if I'm going to give them this opportunity and not give you that opportunity. You follow me. No matter if I'm going to give them a spouse and not give you a spouse, you follow me. Doesn't matter if everybody's going to know who this person is and nobody knows who you are. You follow me. Doesn't matter if you're going to get martyrdom and they're not. You follow me. We are prone to compare ourselves with other people and what God's doing in other people's lives for whatever reason, measure what the Lord thinks about us or whatever, those things. The Lord's message to Peter, and it would be to us, is kindly, tenderly, appropriately rebuking us, saying, mind your own business. What I'm doing with you is what I'm doing with you. What I'm doing with them is what I'm doing with them. It doesn't matter. You follow me. Because if we're always looking over what God's doing in other people's lives, we're not going to be faithful in what he's calling us to do. He's saying, you follow me. Peter, eyes on me. Doesn't matter what I'm going to do with him. I'll take care of him. You follow me. I've found this to be very helpful over the years. I'm one who can be prone to compare myself with others. God's doing somebody else's life and grumble and moan and complain, all that kind of stuff. And, this has been a very helpful reminder. What matters most is, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? If so, follow me. Tend my lambs. I've given you enough stuff to do. You take care of what I've given you. You're going to be distracted if you're constantly comparing yourself to what somebody else is doing. Let that go. Feed my sheep, tend my lambs, do what I told you to do. I found this to be appropriately helpful. So we said this, so the saying spread abroad among the brothers that this disciple would not die. Yet Jesus did not say to him that he was not to die, but if it is my will, you remain until I come. What is that to you? This is the disciple who is bearing witness about these things and who has written these things. And we know that his testimony is true. Now, there are also many other things that Jesus did. For every one of them to be written, I suppose that the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. So John says, rumor spread around that I wasn't going to die. He's like, that's not what Jesus said, by the way. Now, John is the only disciple who ends up not being martyred. All of the others are martyred, according to church history. They tried to kill John a couple different ways, including boiling him in oil, which is a bad way to go. But he didn't die. He was miraculously preserved. He is said to have died in old age. What final reflections do you take away from 15 through the end? Yeah.
Here's why to do love here. And I should like to love you slow like one.
Good. That's great. One of the evidences that you love the Lord is that you're going to love his people. And this is what we are to, what Peter was to be about, and by extension, same with us. Good. Yeah, and we see that's what Peter does. I mean, from here on out, he's helping to build the church. When you watch him in Acts, that's what he's doing. He's building the church. He's proclaiming. He's building up. 1 Peter, 2 Peter. He's writing letters to the churches. He's ministering. He's tending to the flock. Great. Good observation. Yep.
Like, I agree. That like, you're strict, like, part of not being able to turn it into others. Should the board or opposite the picture of things or the affirmation of it like really felt like physical. I don't know, I feel like as an engineer, like I don't often like I sometimes question like would I be willing to like for too hardship, right? And so, like, the idea of being told that you like that for me how strict they have like for my faith and how like that's even though Peter like after and actually like in the days after just like I choose it.
That's great. And you can see it on both sides of his fall, right? When you are restored, like the Lord knew what was going to happen, and He loved him still. And then even after it happened, He loved him still. And just what an encouragement that is. And it emboldened Peter. I mean, the Peter in Acts chapter 2 is a different Peter than the guy next to the charcoal fire. Like, not only does he see the resurrected Lord, but he's been restored and personally commissioned by Him with promises that, He's going to keep him, and that he's going to end up laying down his life for him. And that it empowers and emboldens, encourages. It's a great observation. Anything else here? The end of John. Yeah, so great observation. The command to follow me hasn't changed. It's the same command, but it has deepened, hasn't it? Think about how much they now know about Him compared to the first, hey, follow me. They're like, what are we getting into? Here, follow me. This has been like, what are we getting into? But we know who we're going with because they believed. The depth of belief is now going to give roots that's going to hold them fast in the midst of whatever storm is going to come because of all of these encounters with Him. It's good. Anything else? Gospel John. Yeah.
That's it. It's wow. Few days, how easily taking the easy way out. Yeah, how it is. Just spirit rise up.
Yeah, the call of the disciple is not going to be one of perfection, but perseverance in following him, beholding him, believing. It deepens. May the Lord give us mercy. That's the Gospel of John. I will email you by tomorrow to tell you what we're going to do on Thursday. Trying to figure out which book we're going to go with. I think we're going to do a book. There's going to be one Bible time day where I'm not going to be here, and I think Ben Robin will come in and do one of those little workshops on how to read Christ in the Old Testament. So we get a little bit of both. But let me go ahead and pray first. Father in heaven, thank you for your word. Thank you for the Gospel of John. Thank you for this call to behold and to believe and to see Christ in all of his splendor. And we pray that we would indeed believe. Or would you deepen our faith as we follow? Would you help us to walk in the forgiveness and restoration and reconciliation which was administered by Christ and is preserved even now? Would you guard us from looking to the right or to the left and all the ways we can compare ourselves to others and what you're doing in their lives? Lord, would you help us to receive that appropriate tender rebuke? And would you help us to be contented and not just willing to endure what you call us to, but joyfully desirous and ambitious, and zealous to tend to the flock. And we pray that you would give us much opportunity and strength to do so. So Lord, we thank you for Christ. Thank you for this gospel. Thank you for preserving it for these many years so we might read it and believe it. We pray that you would set up divine appointments even today that we might be able to tell others about Christ. Give us grace in the name of Jesus.